Welcome to AstroChat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Well, hello, and welcome back to another week of AstroChat. It is myself, Kimberly Williams, and my cohorts, Monica Anna and Anne Sundell, and we are here to talk about the upcoming full moon in May. The full moon is going to be happening at 2 degrees of Sagittarius this month on Thursday, May 23rd. Here in the central time zone of the US, that is in the morning at 8:53 a.m. Across the pond, if I did my math right, that's going to be 2:53 in the afternoon in London, 4:53 or military time folk, 16:53 over in Finland. And so we're going to be looking primarily at what's going on with this full moon energy and talking a little bit too about some of the things happening in the 2 weeks following. Some of the big items are the ingresses that will be happening. And if you have Gemini prominent in your chart, or if you just want to look at the house where your Gemini lives, it's going to be very active because we're going to see that the sun just recently ingressed into Gemini about 3 days ago on the 20th. And then coming on the heels of that, Venus on May 24th will enter the sign, Jupiter on May 26th, and Mercury on June 3rd. So bam, 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 we are going to have a lot of Gemini energy. We're not going to have another podcast after today until our next new moon, right? We meet every 2 weeks, more or less, and that will be on June 6th. So if you are interested in being sure that you get notified of when we're back, if you're on YouTube, then down below, click the notification bell. Be sure to subscribe. If you are listening to us on one of the podcast platforms, be sure to set up your reminders so that you can not only enjoy today's episode, but check in and tune in to see what we talk about when we move into the next lunation. All right, I think that's all of my data intro. So with that, I'm going to ask Anne to take it away and tell us more about the Sabian symbol that we have for this particular moon.
Thank you, Kimberly. Yeah, we have a very precise Sabian symbol for 3 degrees of Sagittarius, and it is 2 men playing chess. So, a chess game. And I don't know what's more suitable with what you just told us about everything ingressing into Gemini. And we have a Sagittarius full moon on the other side. And if you think about what's chess, it's a game where you have to see the big picture and you have to mind the details. You have to have strategy, but you still all the time have to be aware of where you're going with your plans and what is the big plan, so to speak. It's also a game that's quite aggressive in many ways. I mean, chess is, I never forget when I saw the Harry Potter movie the first time with the chess game, where they actually it was actually quite scary scene. And I mean, what happens in chess, we have a plan for how we're going to try to strike with this game, but there's uncertainty all the time in the game too. But I think it kind of captures some of the big themes around Sagittarius and the polarity of Gemini, what we need to keep in mind, because even we are aiming for a goal or we are aiming for a vision, we need to remember the plan. We need to remember the details. We can't just forget it. Then we're not going to succeed with this game. So yeah, it's a very speaking symbol this time.
Yeah, I love
Which
that
is
you. Oh, go ahead, Monica.
Which is interesting because Sagittarius is such a fiery sign. The impulsiveness is part of its nature, and yet the chest of game, you can't be impulsive. You can't just go for it. This is not the game for you. This is very much calculated. Take a step back, have a really kind of cold, precise approach to the strategy. And what's also interesting with chess is this is the game where you willingly sometimes sacrifice your pawn to protect your queen, to protect your king, to actually, make a move. Sometimes you kind of set the game in a way where your opponent thinks you're going there, but you're willing to sacrifice that part of the game and then come from the other side. So sometimes there's this kind of underhanded strategy that you don't want to reveal, but it's all very kind of cold and calculated. So so yeah, it's a really interesting Sabian symbol for that.
It is. I love, Anne, how you brought up the fact of the Harry Potter movie. That's what I was thinking of as well, the chess game there, and how in the plot line they had to play to their strengths. They did this game, uh, the whole strategy of the final chapters of that book, of that story, was there was a test followed by a test followed by a test, and chess was one of those tests. And in each one, somebody had to play to their strengths to solve it. It wasn't one person going the entire journey. And when they got to that chess game, it was not the person who was the most charismatic character, right? The Harry Potter character. It was not the smartest, most intelligent Hermione character. It was the one that was able to see the bigger picture and understand how to do it move by move. That's the thing with chess is sometimes you've got to sacrifice a pawn to call somebody in. Sometimes you have to take an initiative and take a risk and put your piece where it might get captured. But it's all this idea of we must do things step by step, which to me is interesting because it doesn't feel very Sagittarian on the surface. And
Mhm.
yet, if you think about, well, if I'm going to go look at a forest and I want to survey the land of the forest, I do have to step back and I have to think about all the pieces that make it up and maybe divide that forest into its sections and consider what's going on there. So there's something here that's almost like instead of rushing in, taking a mindful moment to slow down and break things into the bigger chunks and getting each chunk done so that we're able to reach that final goal. It's kind of a really interesting analogy, but especially with us having all this Taurus energy and now shifting into all this Gemini, you can totally see who the two men are playing chess. Am I doing it the Taurus way? Am I doing it the
Yeah.
Gemini way? It should be very interesting.
Well, it's going back, actually going to the full moon. Full moon will be in Sagittarius. And actually this is interesting picture metaphor for this full moon, because Sagittarius is about bigger picture. Gemini is about the details. Sagittarius is about bigger picture. I always think Gemini is the one that collects all the puzzle pieces, and make sure that, when you kind of throw the box and there's like 1,500, first you kind of count if it is actually 1,500, no point starting if half of them missing. Then you group them. Those are the blues, those are the greens. And then Sagittarius is the one that actually see the big picture and see how they all fit together, and actually doesn't see the lines between them, but see that beautiful scenery or landscape or picture of someone. And with the chess, it's the same. Each chess is responsible for something, can move differently. It's very Gemini. I'm different. I look different. I have different moves, like Jagger. Sorry, couldn't resist. But it's the Sagittarius that it's the one on the back saying, actually, you move, diagonally, I can use you here, and you move forward, I can use you here. So it's the Sagittarius that see the big picture. And I think this is a beauty about full moon in Sagittarius. Full moon in Sagittarius shows us this opposition between what we understand at that data level, but what we see as the analytics, seeing the numbers and crunching the numbers or seeing the data up close doesn't give you the full picture. And then the full picture can't exist without the data in it, without the correct, data. So
Oh.
Gemini and Sagittarius need to work like that. The Gemini is the school, when we learn the language, the vocabulary, what things mean, what means, what is green and what is sky. And then Sagittarius is the one that actually takes all that and creates philosophy. It uses everything that we've learned, all the encounters that we have, all the experiences that we have, and creates for ourselves and for others philosophy of life, meaning of life. Sagittarius is the one that puts it all together. So this cycle sometimes reveals the tension between what is it that we believe, because we already put that picture, we've already grown up, whether we're 20, 40 or 60, we always think of ourselves like, I know this, and Sagittarius is the one, I've known this, that's I already have a structure philosophy within me, structure belief within me, from which I then judge others, take actions, yeah. And the tension between that and actually something that I don't understand yet, Sagittarius, and I always go back to that when I talk about this archetype. Sagittarius talks about foreigners and foreign things and things that are different to us. We've never encountered them. We've never eaten that food. We've never spoke with that person, whether it's, from our neighborhood or from a different culture, something that we've never encountered. And the danger with Sagittarius, the downside is we already might have preconceived notions about them. Our philosophy of life and our meaning might already think, you know what? The people from that neighborhood are not great. Or the people who wear blue tops, I don't like them. Because maybe when you were at school, the blue tops were the one that bullied you. It's something that we already had a little bit of data, created the bigger philosophy of life, and now from that place, we judge everything that we don't know. But Sagittarius is also about adventure. Go where no one gone before. That's the Sagittarius. Go to that mountain that no one climbed before. Go and visit that lake that no one swam in before. Learn something that no one learned before and bring that and spread that. Sagittarius is about spreading the information and experiences to others, and actually being a teacher, but being a teacher through learning it yourself. So I can talk about Sagittarius. You can tell. So I'll stop myself now.
Actually, I was just going to say, why don't you talk a little more about Sagittarius? Because we were going to talk about having a full moon in Sagittarius and how that full moon maybe is a little different from some of the others. Do you want to move us into that?
I mean, the full moon. So are we going straight away into the soup, or should I just talk about Sagittarius as a full moon?
Full moon Sagittarius. Let's hold off on the soup. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, this is it. Sagittarius highlights those tensions within us, the tension between our philosophy and with what we already believe and the picture that we already built, and highlights the shadow, so to speak, of Gemini, all those data points that we haven't considered yet. So just to expand to what I was talking, we learn something and we build the philosophy of life. But if we're going to stick only with what we've learned in that echo chamber, as we call it, and only hear the same news from the same people, from the same channels, from the same colleagues, then I only reinforcing the philosophy that we already have. But if I will ask for an opinion, or for, someone else, someone that, might have had a different background that I am, might have different job that I have, might have different philosophy or approach to life, it can give me something. It gives me a different data point. It might not convince me. It's not about argument. It's not about whether I'm right or you're right, which again, it's a shadow side of the full moon. This kind of like, my philosophy is better than your philosophy. The righteousness of Jupiter and Sagittarius, that I'm the righteous teacher, I'm the guru, I'm the right person. My philosophy in life and approach to life is the right one and not yours. Or my religious beliefs are right and not yours. But if we approach that with curiosity, again, with that, you're foreign to me, I don't understand. Why is it? I can never understand British people and their fish and chips and vinegar on that. I can't. But I live with that. I'm married to one of them, right? This is as foreign to me as it is for him to understand, why do I like sauerkraut, or gherkins. Again, can't understand that. But this is what it is. This is the beauty. You learn from someone, and it still might not be for you, but it's expanding your view. You can learn something from it. And I think full moon around Sagittarius can highlight those shadows within us. If we are mindful and aware of our own shadow, of our own bias, it's really easy to see that at the full moon, because we'll come up with grandiose gestures like, I am better than my neighbors, I am better than my colleagues, I know better than my boss, like, listen to me, and if you can stop for a second there and say, well, do I know better? Tap into that curious, adventurous side of a Sagittarius, explorative side of a Sagittarius. Goes like, do I really? Should I explore that? That can take you to a completely different land, and it literally just can enrich your experience and enrich your life. So full moon in Sagittarius can be tricky to manage, as all full moons, and especially full moons in fire, because when you're there, really kind of blown like the Jupiter, ready to kind of preach to the masses from the place, that you really believe. It's really tricky to kind of pull yourself back and say, why am I in such a guru position? What is it about that pride situation there? But if you have that restraint, if you have that awareness, that mindful approach can really, really enrich your experience here.
Yeah. And any thoughts you want to throw in?
Oh, there's a lot. As with Sagittarius, everything's grand and much. And I think about the attitude of Sagittarius too. Like the attitude towards life versus maybe having more like second thinking, second guessing, being too critical or being a bit afraid of the unknown. That to the meaning of Sagittarius, to give meaning, to give hope, to show that there is optimism, to see the glass is half full, to, even if it's maybe not so realistic always, but still like keeping up the heightening the feelings of success or possibilities, like more about having a name, but it's not so much about getting there as to enjoy the trip and learn from experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, totally true. I like what you said earlier, Monica. We talk about this almost every full moon, that shadow piece of how the full moon really shines light on what was previously not seen. And for me, when the full moon's in Sagittarius and you're getting that Gemini Sagittarius axis dichotomy going, I feel like a lot of times it's the difference between what is happening for me here and where I want to be over there. And so it's real easy to get excited and as you were mentioning, fiery and passionate about where we want to be headed, where we want to be going. But sometimes where we want to be headed and where we want to be going, we're not actually taking action to get there, or we're rushing to get there without chunking it down into those step by steps to make it happen. If I just run to the horizon, I may get to the horizon and realize I left my lunch back home. Now I'm starving. Like, we can create problems, we can self-generate stickiness and issues to get stuck in. And I think some of the shadow of it has to do with a lack of awareness about diversity. The Gemini energy is a lot of ideas and a lot of communication. But if I'm here in that echo chamber, talking to the people I know here, doing the same things I've been doing, kind of repeating those cycles, not necessarily opening up and broadening my mind to what will I find over there? Who wants to go there? What is the reason that something is calling me to take a journey or to seek? I think of Sagittarius very much as being a seeker kind of energy, a quest.
Mm-hmm.
But am I just doing the quest for the sake of discovery, or is there a reason? Is there a purpose? Is there something I want? And what are the things I need? What are those details I need to make it happen? Sometimes those details are other points of view. And I think that can be a challenge both for Gemini and Sagittarius, that expanding and getting other points of view, it isn't going to serve me or my community if I'm preaching to the choir. And it's not going to serve if I'm preaching to others and not listening, right? There needs to be more sharing of ideas, opening ourselves to different ideas. What are the other points of view besides those I'm already familiar with? And so I'm hopeful that with this particular full moon, a lot of us will be doing the work to open up and listen and seek out other viewpoints, other ways of maybe pursuing the goals that we are so excited and fiery about.
So one thing I'll just add here is that Gemini Sagittarius, the idea that we connect and create networks in Gemini. In Sagittarius, we can see that those networks are as interconnected, not just connected, but interconnected.
Oh, I love that.
It just goes deep, just goes deeper.
Yeah.
Actually, I just read that in the journal that I wrote. I'm like, yeah, it was good. Talking
That's
about
really
Sagittarius
good.
and philosophy, right? It's like actually how appropriate Gemini and Sagittarius. I wrote this.
I gotta say, I am always astounded when I take time out to do my new moon and full moon journal prompts that you put in your book, because they really make me stop and think and broaden my perspective and deepen the meaning of each lunation. So that's
I
beautiful.
appreciate that. Thank you. So should we put the chart on and talk about the soup?
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Let me pull it up. All right, so here's our chart. And for those who are listening, just a quick reminder that we are looking at May 23rd, 2024. I have set this one for 8:53 a.m. Central Daylight Time, but feel free to set yours on your system to whatever time zone you're in. We are looking at the moon at 2 degrees and 55 minutes of Sagittarius, with the sun opposite, of course, at the same degree point of Gemini. All right. Before we unpack the whole messy soup, as Monika likes to call it, and I do love that analogy, why don't we take turns just talking about our top 2 or 3 things that are calling to us as we look at this? Monika, why don't you lead us off?
So for me, the Jupiter and Venus meeting together on the full moon at 29 degrees of Taurus. I think that's quite interesting. And obviously they're making a sextile to 29 in Neptune. And full moon is actually making a sextile. So moon is making a sextile and sun is making a trine to Pluto. So that Pluto, melody, the tune is still playing. It's coming up in so many of our conversations, but it's still playing there. So those would be probably my top 2.
Awesome. Kind of similar that not only the Jupiter and Venus in Taurus making that sextile to Neptune, but the fact that we have a stellium in Taurus, we have Mercury, Uranus, as well as the Jupiter and Venus. That really catches my attention. We talked about this a bit last time because we had a lot of Taurus energy then too. So that is still there. And the fact that, as we said at the beginning of our episode, over the next week and a half, we're going to see the majority of these all enter Gemini one after the other. So we've got right now, number one thing that catches me is the Taurus stellium that includes the benefics conjunct at 29, making a sextile to Neptune at 29 degrees. Number 2 is the fact that they're all going to be going into Gemini, and we're going to have a Gemini stellium pretty quick. And the number 3 is that as each of them enters Gemini, as the sun is right now, like you were mentioning, at 2 degrees of Gemini, it is making an exact trine to Pluto. Pluto at 2 degrees of Aquarius retrograde. I think that this 2 degrees of Pluto Aquarius is very powerful. I noticed it when it was in direct motion at the beginning of the year, and we hit this 2 degree point. There was a lot of activity happening, and now here we are again. So my number 3 thing would be the sort of activation, reactivation of that Pluto Aquarius energy and what all that means. And what about for you? What are the things that really stand out? And then we'll start talking about all of them.
Well, what stands out is those anaretic degrees, 29, and also Neptune 29 degrees. So I think that that's intense. Also, moon is quite lonely at one side when planet is um, positioned like that, opposing a lot. I think that also kind of heightens its qualities in this chart, and it might be in one way more powerful and at that point. Then also I'm looking a bit at Mars still hanging out on the North Node. So even it's separating aspect, but it's still close to the North Node.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sandwiched there, right? In between that North Node and Chiron. I think Monica, you were mentioning that during our kind of pre-show when we get together and talk about what we want to outline, what we want to speak to. It does feel very like a very powerful placement for that powerful and volatile combo for that Mars. All right, so how do y'all interpret this? How are you delineating some of these signatures? Anybody want to jump in first?
I mean, Anne started us off before we started recording on the 29th anaretic degree, and I think this degree is really visible in this chart. And Anna, I'd love for you to kind of unpack that, to put you on the spot.
Thanks, Monica. Just love when you do that. 29
Said Scorpio.
degrees. Yeah. It's like it's in a degree that I think it's also a very like karmic degree. I mean, we are approaching the last degree of the sign. We need to go through the last roller coasters of that sign. The last things, it's like heightening the lessons we need to understand of that sign before we can move to the next. It might be seen as more taking maybe black and white approach to the themes of that sign at that with that planet. Like it's heightened, it's intensive. It might be feel a bit more like unstable. That way, it's not so easy to get it to work in a balanced way. It's more like we need to understand that we have learned what we need to do in Taurus, and I think it's the intensity of all that Taurus, like really, that's going to change so quickly. It's going to feel very different. Like we have been through a lot of like the values, the economic stuff with Taurus. Well, we still have Uranus there that's going to be there, but still it's kind of Venus and Jupiter might seem like really nice guys, but still they can be very of the top, especially opposing a Sag moon. Things can go like you can be rather too optimistic, or you can be too interested in enjoying life. Also with Venus, you can think both of those planets have a tendency to go over the top with things in their own ways. Then Neptune, making an aspect to 29 degrees in Neptune in Pisces. It's really like a fog, like really not seeing clearly, or a very idealistic way. It can also be a very inspiring way to see, or a very artistic, visionary way. But still, it's kind of it's also intensity of that last degree in Pisces with Neptune. That's been going on for a long time now. So yeah, it's that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, totally. Everything you said, ditto, ditto, ditto. And then additionally, I'd also add that, I have some concerns that with all this energy flowing, that there could be a yearning for escapism. Escapism can be a real shadow side of Neptune, and it will be going retrograde at the end of summer at this 29 degrees. So there's an energy there that's kind of amplifying it even more. And I think about the anaretic degree of 29 as sort of that when you're doing your final paper, you're getting ready to graduate, and it's the last 2 weeks beforehand. On the one hand, it is an opportunity to really demonstrate, to show what you've learned. As these planets have taken us through, all the 28 degrees and so many minutes that precipitated, we've learned, we've grown, we've experienced. It's an opportunity to really integrate it in our life. On the other hand, if you haven't done the work and you haven't learned things, this could be where the pressure is on and the water on the stove is boiling over the pot because now I have to learn it. I have to do it right now before the shift happens and the planets are going into the next sign. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure and intensity to really manifest that Taurus energy, expand. What do you desire? Believe in your ability to create. And that can be scary. And sometimes, if we feel like what we want to create is bigger than we're capable of, or bigger than our finances allow, or something that I'm not yet ready for, the yearning to just escape, to sit on the couch, to veg out, to delay, to procrastinate, all of those coping mechanisms that are so unhealthy about avoidance can really come to the surface. So it can flow in very positive ways, but there's also a lot of challenges that we have to overcome with this, I think.
Yeah. It's the exam, isn't it? We're trying to pass the exam of that planet in that zodiac. So and like you say, like with exam, if you prepared, if you've done your lesson, if you attended classes, if did your essays and did your dissertation, there's nothing to worry about. It might be a bit more, kind of out of left field because, oh, I didn't see that question coming, but I remember that question. I've done that before. If you avoided the classes, avoided professor, I mean, skip the everything else, well, this is it. This is your last moment. And if you are not prepared, you might wing it, but the stress and the tension definitely will be there. I mean, two of those planets, obviously Venus moves through a zodiac sign relatively quick, but Jupiter stays in the same zodiac for a long time. So Jupiter, we're talking about Jupiter at the end of the Taurus. Jupiter has been in this sign since May 2023. So that's a long time for one planet. So we've experienced that expansion in terms of Taurian elements in our life over the last few months. And this is the moment where we can take a stock, has that auspicious planet, helped us, expanded things for us? Have we expanded our business? Have we expanded, I don't know, our gardening skills? Have we expanded the way we thought about what do we consider worthy or worth our time and our money in our lives? Have we actually, um, learn? I mean, Jupiter is also, a teacher, right? Slightly different to Taurus, but it's also that kind of teacher archetype, that guru archetype, that when we talk about meaning, and especially in Taurus, it's like, what has meanings to us? Have we learned about meaning of our body, meaning of the land, meaning of the interconnectedness? If we have, that 29 degree is going to remind us about it and send us on our way into Gemini to bring all those lessons into Gemini and then connect with like-minded people, make networks based on the beliefs that we've learned in the previous sign. And this is the, again, beauty of astrology. What you learn in a previous sign, you take it with you onto the journey. So then again, if you haven't learned those lessons, you might not be able to connect with those people. If you connect the people, you actually won't be able to bring that with you. So you might lose those connections. And talking about Neptune in a Pisces, I think that change, which is not going to happen until like 2025, early 2025, it's going to be significant because Neptune's been in Pisces since 2012. So it's been there for a really long time. And we collectively dreamt and experienced, illusion, hallucination, fog, and all sorts of kind of delusional things on TV and reality, things that, looking back, you'll say, did that really happen? How delusional were we to think that, to do that, to believe in that, to play those games? And those are the last months of Neptune there before it will go into fiery sign of Aries. So again, have we learned as a collective what is our dream and what is our shadow? Have we dived into the depth of our unconscious, collective unconscious, and have we actually understood the spiritual lesson, or have we only saw the shadow and the monsters and brought that into the surface?
Okay, so Anne had to leave us. She had some other commitments had to go to, but we're going to wrap up by talking about that Pluto energy, especially as the sun right now is making a trine. And we're going to see over the coming days slash weeks that Venus, Jupiter, and then Mercury, one by one, will all be coming in. And as they enter into Gemini, they will, within a few days, make an exact trine to that Pluto at 2 degrees Aquarius retrograde. I'm going to start off because, I've been, Monica, I've been chomping at the bit to talk about this today. Um, it's exciting and intimidating energy for me. I mean, yeah, trines are harmonious, but trines are harmonious is not always good, right? It means the energy flows easily. And Pluto energy flowing easily can be hard, right? It is often, I think, about reliving, remembering, maybe revisiting old pain, old trauma, the things that really take us into our shadow. For me, Pluto is always about doing an underworld journey. It's like I'm following Persephone or Inanna down the gates into the underworld. And in the story of Inanna, especially, she goes down in the underworld to visit her sister, the goddess of the dead of the underworld. And when she's down there, she dies and she hangs on a hook and has to like release and let go of everything she has been. Massive identity crisis, if you will. And then at some point, right, she's removed from the hook. There's things in the story that make that happen. And she then returns. And it's a journey to return. It's not like, poof, I'm back. And so to me, all of these Gemini things, energies of our ideas that are flowing and the creativity and the thoughts, and perhaps be careful of some of the gossip, right? All of these things that are happening is so much excitement, and then it hits that Pluto. So, what is it that is calling you back to life? What is it that is calling you to return from? What is it that wants a piece of your darkness, of your soul, of the thing that has been hidden? What is it calling that part of you back to return, back to life? It's not just me. It's that part of me that has been hidden in shadow, has been denied, has been repressed, um, was wrapped up with too much pain. So I didn't want to bring that part of me out into the light. It's being called, right? And so there's a really beautiful rebirth. This is the energy of what is starting that phoenix to rise from those ashes. But it's just starting. And it can be extremely, I think, painful. And it can be a lot of relived trauma for some of us. What are your thoughts about it?
Um, how not to be the negative Nancy, or as someone said recently, frustrated Fran. um, Pluto is not an easy energy. We don't live in society that gives us tools and teaches us how to deal with death. And that's what ultimately Pluto is. It's a death of your old personality. It's a death of your previous life. It's a death in the rebirth after divorce, or serious illness. We don't really are, we're not taught in our modern society, and I'm referring to, when I say we, in a Western world, about how to deal with that, how to deal with grief. We very often sanitize those dark aspects of our lives, like grief, like death, like illness. And Pluto wants to talk about them. Pluto wants to show them to us, and actually show them in a really, really powerful way. And Pluto speaking to this full moon in Sagittarius, and especially given what Anna told us about the Sabian symbol and the chess game, for me, there's again this underlying tune of there is a chess game happening. Are you being a pawn in someone else's game? or are you the one playing the game? You know, whether it's in your private life, whether it is in your workplace, you know, kind of politics, or whether it's on a global scale. You know, are we aware that there is a game being played? Are we aware whether with the, you know, white or the black pawns on which side of the chessboard? Are we aware that, you know, we might just be um you know, used, so to speak, in someone else's strategy? Again, on any level that we want to be aware of that, whether it's, you know, the strategy between, you know, our friends group, or in circles that we belong to, whether it is at work, you know, politics going on and reshuffling happening behind closed doors, or whether it is on a global scale, you know, whichever country you're in, you can see what's happening in politics. And again, the full moon highlights for us the shadow. So if we are not fanatical about it, and I use this word specifically because of Sagittarius, because Sagittarius can have that fire of fanaticism, regardless what it is. You know, NutriBullet changed my life. Good for you. If you're becoming fanatic about that, you know, again, that's probably not healthy. You know, like, I don't know. Um, whatever it is, whether it's a religion, or, you know, a fad diet, or this designer kind of, whatever it is, we can really hooked onto it in the Sagittarian energy. And like I said, put someone on a pedestal like a guru and only see that. And that's the downside of Sagittarius. That's the dark side of Sagittarius. How many gurus have we seen throughout the history that took people down with them,
Mm-hmm.
because they were the, you know, the kind of false gurus, false prophets, you know, cult leaders, and so on. And that happens, you know, in groups of friends at school, you know, like with 13-year-old, they have those guru kind of friends around, and then dynamic changes. But the idea of Sagittarius in the full moon is take a step back and see the big picture. Can't emphasize that, you know, enough. See the big picture, see the puzzle pieces, see how they fit, and see where and how the chess game is played. Who is playing, who benefits that? You
Yeah.
know, ultimately, you know, throughout the history, the war's been played, and the pawns on the field die for ideology, or for religion, or for, you know, the land. And ultimately, it's the powers that be that move those around. And it's the powers that be that play the game that usually win the game.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see that playing out at the big scale, in the world, as well as in some back rooms. Do you know what I mean, in the politics, or in the corporate world office? It's really interesting. And Pluto in Aquarius. I know there's so much good thing about Pluto in Aquarius. I always feel like I'm bringing that negative side. Pluto in Aquarius can be incredibly detached.
Yeah.
It's the idea of, like, you know, AI ruling the humanity. I will tell you the most beautiful utopia, and if you don't like it, you're either with me or against me. That can be Pluto in Aquarius. You know,
Yes.
we're talking about humanity side of Aquarius, but also Aquarius can be incredibly cold and detached.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm doing that for humanity, for my fellow humans, but I do it the way I want it,
Yeah. And we care about the
you know?
cause, right? I care about homelessness and
Yeah.
changing the system, but that doesn't mean I'm going to help the homeless person on the corner. It is a more global perspective, and like you said, a very detached perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the, you know, it's the revolution that we had, you know, like the French Revolution.
yeah.
We've changed something, but it was bloody. You know, Pluto in Aquarius was not kind of washing its hands from that. It was bloody, it was powerful. It changed the society for better or for worse. There is kind of like, you know, it's not about the judgment, it's just about the learning, you know, and seeing that pattern within the history.
Yeah.
But it was very much, you're either with us or without, against us. There is no in between. There is no listening to or vibing with other team, or, you know, learning from other team, or having compromise. No, it's, I can see the, you know, the future, and if you can't see it with me, you're going to be removed.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes about the collective message matters more than it's so funny because Aquarius is so about the individual and being my authentic self and bringing that forward. And yet, when we come together and we have our tribe and we are collectively working on the issue now, the issue becomes more important and the personal can get left
Yeah,
behind if we're not careful. I also think that when
100%.
Pluto's in Aquarius are times of great censorship historically. And
Yeah.
I'm really thinking this with the energy here of this Gemini to the Aquarius, right? The what is going on with our need to speak truth to power, Gemini applying
Yeah.
energy to Pluto, but also what's going on with censoring of that from that Pluto and Aquarius kind of back at. And what I'm
Mm.
thinking is that, this may be about finding our voice, or if we've already found our voice, practicing to develop that ability to use our voice in ways that feel a little threatening and a little challenging. Um, as Venus comes in, it could be in relationship. As Jupiter comes in, it may be to our teachers and our gurus, or to ourself about becoming the teacher or guru, right? That's time for that inner critic to die off, literally, in our mind.
Hmm.
As Mercury comes in, how do I use my words to communicate my message or my thoughts or my needs or my beliefs? And so I think we may find that the pressure is on as all of this is happening in kind of rapid succession to keep practicing speaking that truth over and over and do it again and do it again in different scenarios with different people. And some of those people might even be ourselves. Because, to me, with Pluto and Aquarius, I see a lot of parallels to sort of a soul retrieval. What part of yourself during the last 20 years when it was in Capricorn splintered off? What part of yourself got left behind because it didn't fit the conventional models? Now's the time to bring that back, but that's scary. So we have to talk to ourselves when we want to stop ourselves or censor ourselves or be like, well, they don't want to hear what I have to say. Or, well, maybe they don't, but does that mean I shouldn't say it? Or, you know what I mean? So I kind of think there's going to be a whole lot of paying attention to where we stop ourselves from communicating the message that needs to come forward. And then because it's the Sagittarius full moon, bringing it back full circle, and also not jumping onto the bandwagon and becoming the person who's preaching and talking at people and not listening. Like we don't necessarily need to become the one who becomes the adamant savior for everyone else. So a lot of energy there. I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks.
It is.
You ready to go into tips and tricks, or are there other thoughts you had burning about that Pluto energy?
I, I have so many thoughts, but I think, like we said, we could be here for hours, so we always have to
Hours.
kind of censor ourselves or edit ourselves to
Yes.
be better. Um, Actually, it is a full moon in Sagittarius. So as much as I was talking about the shadow and the ability, I think one thing that really kind of puts us in that humble position and ability to be mindful is the gratitude. And there's no better time to do that at the full moon, and no better time to do that at the full moon in Sagittarius. So I think this is a beautiful full moon to actually journal on your gratitude, whether to express it in your journal, whether to express it with beautiful meal for your friends or your partner, whether to express it, by, I don't know, dancing in your garden, to a great music and drinking some daiquiri, whatever it is. Sagittarius is such a beautiful way of being grateful for adventures in your life, being grateful for the teachers in your life. And teachers, again, anyone can be your teacher. Your old boss could be your teacher, your neighbor could be your teacher. So being grateful for the adventures, for the teachers in your life, being grateful for people who brought to your life something new, whether it's a new recipe, new way of thinking about, travel, or, new group of friends that you met through your, the neighbor on the corner of your street. People that bring novelty, something new into your life and expand who you are at your core. They're letting your soul expand beyond the limits that's been created there. I think this is beautiful new moon to have that gratitude and express the gratitude the way you want to. It doesn't have to be a gratitude journal.
That's beautiful. Because of all that Gemini energy, I'm also like thinking that this is a great time for journaling. And if you're not a journaler, then get a small group of people that you are friends with together and make it conversational. But the main thing here is whether we're writing it or speaking it is to get in touch with the words of what do you desire, Venus? What do you want to teach or what do you want to learn, Jupiter? What is it you want to say, Mercury? And after, either making your list, journaling your journal, or conversing with your friends, however it works for you, after you've kind of thought about these three things, come up with one word about how or what about that scares you. What is the one word? Okay, maybe two if you really need to, but no more, right? There's power
It's Gemini,
in words.
it's two.
Yeah, it's Gemini, it's two, right? But there's power in words. And if we get very focused on what is the word, and sometimes it's a little, game and semantics with ourselves, but sometimes that can help open a door to see what is it I'm afraid of? Is it afraid if I say this that, I will be abandoned? I will not be accepted? Like, what is that fear? I have a feeling that those fears are going to have a very strong Aquarian shadow kind of energy to them. But if we can know what that one fear is, then in the months that follow, as we have more podcast episodes talking about upcoming Mars retrogrades, we'll be able to start taking action steps there. So for now, flush out the thoughts around those three things and come up with one word about how changes in those areas, what kind of fear do they bring up? That's kind of what I'll be working on during this full moon. A little shadow
One
work.
thing that I one thing that I love about actually having the podcast with, both of you is that how when one of us says something, the other was like, oh, and something else. We bounce off each other. And what you just said about actually this putting like the something on a piece of paper, there's something practical. It's a lovely little trick or practical tip that I would encourage you to do and start on the full moon. And actually, as it is full moon in Sagittarius, the next new moon in Sagittarius, so the 6 months later, it will be around Thanksgiving. So when we're talking about gratitude now at full moon, there is a lovely exercise that you can do. You can literally just get yourself a jar or a can or a box, fancy little box. And every week, starting with the full moon, every week, writing something that you're grateful for or something good that happened, that week. I mean, sometimes weeks are so bad that the only thing that happened, it was this beautiful caramel latte that you had. Sometimes that keeps you going. I know that sometimes my latte is my treat. So when I have a really good one done by barista, I will literally turn around and say, that is good, because not everyone can do a nice latte. So in every week, have a little ritual, maybe on a Friday, maybe on Saturday, putting that into that jar. And around Thanksgiving, when you're around that, when you're around your family or when you just on your own, have the moment of unpacking all the beautiful things and grateful things that happened to you in your life. Because in those dark months of the new moon in Sagittarius, when we go into that November period, when in the northern hemisphere, the nights are really long and crappy and wet and cold and everything, unpacking a box of sunshine will be such a uplift, and you can start at the full moon. So yeah, that's that. It reminded me about that exercise, so thank you, Kimberly.
That's
I might actually set
beautiful.
one myself.
I like it. That's beautiful and so uplifting, and it feels very Sagittarian. So that is a perfect way to end our episode.
And it doesn't feel like me.
See, you're not
cold
always looking at the dark
Sagittarius.
shadow underneath everything. So yay. All right.
Yay.
So with that, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we welcome your comments, your questions, your thoughts. How is this working for you? How is this Taurus energy, Gemini energy, Pluto and Aquarius energy? How is it affecting you? Where are you feeling it in your chart? Let's keep the conversation going until we're back again in 2 weeks' time. And don't forget, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, click your notification systems in the platform of your choice so that you can join us in 2 weeks for the next new moon.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this week's AstroChat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. AstroChat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support AstroChat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.